Hi guys and welcome to AirAbility, your regular dose of lead therapy. And I must admit, I have personally needed some lead therapy this week because I came home from the competition last weekend having contracted COVID. Well, I spent a few days in bed and I'm on the mend now. I'm a little bit on the tired side, but I thought I'd still try and crack a video out for you guys. Well, what happened at the competition? It was the first big competition of the year at Portishead, and I won the HV class. I'm over the moon with that. I did really well, and the gun performed exquisitely. Not only did I win the HV class, but I came second in the light varmint class as well. So that was a really fantastic and successful weekend for me. It's always a worry when you're coming out of pre-season preparation to see how you're actually going to do in competition. So I'm absolutely over the moon, and I also shot my highest ever scorecard in competition. I scored a 249 11x, and that was the very last card I shot, and I needed a 249 to win. So for me, it was a bit like one of those Rocky movies, tense all the way at the end. I do need to do a shout out to my mate Graham Freeman, because he won the light varmint class and he won the aggregates by 2 points, beating me. He'd had a bit of a dry season last season, and he came back strong in the first event of this season, and it's great to see the Phoenix rise. Nice job, Graham. Anyway, what are we here to talk about today? Well, we're here to talk about Benchrest shooting with both eyes open, using binocular vision. Now, hopefully, I don't offend any pirates out there. I didn't mean to, not include everybody in this video, but as far as I'm aware, the maritime criminal community is not really that into Benchrest. So, let's have a chat about why we use binocular vision in Benchrest. So binocular vision is one of those skills that I think people forget about, and they just kind of wing on the day, when it should be something we practice basically all the time. It's as important as pulling the trigger when we are shooting 25-meter Benchrest outside using wind flags. Now, why is it important? Well, as you know, you'll have to reverse this if you're a right-handed shooter, but as a left-handed shooter, I look through the scope here with my left eye, and I look down the range with my right eye to read the wind flags. Now, if you don't practice swapping between one eye and the other eye, and you're able to change your viewpoint very quickly and remain focused, the wind can actually change in that second or two. You're realigning your eyes, and you can miss the optimal moment for taking the shot. So it's in your interest to practice this skill so you can do it as quickly and as cleanly as possible to ensure you have the most up-to-date picture of the wind flags before you pull the trigger. I really do think that I've got a little method of how I go about training myself to do this, and you can even do it when you're indoors or in your back garden. What do you need to do to set up your gun first of all to make sure you have the best chance of using binocular vision correctly? Well, the first thing is you need to make sure that your scope, eyepiece and reticle are focused absolutely perfectly before you even start. Now, what happens is people sometimes focus the eyepieces quite quickly, and yes, it works for normal shooting conditions when you're using one eye, but you have to focus your eyepiece so it's in balance with your eye that is not actually looking through the scope, and this can be quite difficult. So how do you do that? Well, this is probably one of the most important pieces of equipment a Benchrest shooter can have: a blank piece of paper. And I mean, this piece of paper has to be absolutely pristine and blank, so there's nothing on this when you're looking through the scope can distract your vision, so you focus on that instead of the reticle. So when we set up the reticle to make sure it's in perfect focus, we put a piece of absolutely pure cardboard down the end of the range, and we set the gun up looking at it. Now, the next step is you need to relax your eyes as if you're looking to the horizon. You have to be set on distance view, not on a near focal point. And once you practice relaxing your eyes onto distance view, you then adjust the focus of the reticle at the end of the scope until it's absolutely pristine. It absolutely pristine over top of that white paper. And focusing your reticle on top of a sheet of pure white paper will give you the best chance of actually achieving the best focus for you. Now, why do we do that? It's so when we look to the horizon to read our wind flags, our eyes are balanced. And when we swap back to the eye that's looking through the scope, the eyes don't have to readjust to focus again to look through the scope. Because when you look through one eye, even if you're not looking through the other eye, it does tend to focus the same as the eye that you're looking through. So if you're looking through the scope with the same level of focus on this eye as you would when you're looking with the other eye at the wind flags, your eyes are not going to be chopping and changing when you look at wind flag, scope, scope, wind flags, wind flag, scope, scope, wind flags. And that is going to have a lot of benefits. First of all, the benefit is that it is not going to give you any eye strain. And secondly, it's going to speed up the process so you're not refocusing in between swapping eyes, and you have the most up-to-date information on what the wind flags are doing before you pull the trigger. So, how can I practice using binocular vision? Well, you don't even have to shoot outside to practice using your binocular vision. Sorry, because I've been poorly, I haven't done much prep for this video, but I do have a few props. And first of all, I would suggest that you get some PVC aluminous tape. There's lots of this kind of stuff available in many different colours on eBay and Amazon, and you just look for non-adhesive tape or ribbon, and I would buy a few different types to see which one actually flies the best in the wind for you when you put them on your wind flags. But a little bit of extra tape like this comes in really handy. And why is that? If you're indoors, you can just tie a little bit to a garden cane and stick it in something so it'll stand up straight. And that will give you something for your non-shooting eye to focus on in between shots. So I have a little exercise, even when I'm shooting in the garden and I don't use wind flags, I have a bit of this tape hung up. And before I take every shot, I go scope, ribbon, scope, ribbon, scope, ribbon, and so on, and go through a pretend cycle as if I was shooting outside. The benefit of this is it ingrains it into your muscle memory and it becomes habit. And also, it relieves eye strain because you're practicing the movement regularly. And I can honestly say I don't take a shot indoors without doing this repetitive little exercise. So I'm ready for when I go outside. So I place a bit of tape approximately halfway, about 12.5 meters downrange, which gives me something to focus on when I'm in the garden and in the garden and or shooting indoors. In the field, however, it's a different matter. You can use your wind flags, but I still would make sure that you, every time you shoot, you do this swap between eyes so you can build up the skill of keeping the focal plane between the two eyes the same, and you're cutting down on the response time that you have to the wind. Now, I just wanted to make sure, because I was still a bit COVID-ized and I wasn't thinking straight, but when I'm talking about swapping eyes, I'm talking about you remain absolutely static in your shooting position. You don't move your head from the scope. You just swap which eye you are looking through at one time. So you swap from the wind flag eye to through the scope eye and back and forth. And when the desired wind pattern comes up, the last thing you need to be doing is looking through the eye that is looking through the scope to make sure that the gun is still on target for where you want to shoot. Some people can have problems with this approach, but there are ways to get around it. First of all, when I first started doing it, I got a lot of eye strain, and that's gone now because I've built up the muscles in my eyes and in me, whatever it is. It just doesn't happen anymore because I'm used to it. But I'll be honest with you, when I first started shooting with wind flags, I got a lot of eye strain, and I think some of that was not having my scope set up balanced correctly as well. Now I know how to do it. It's pretty much an easy thing for me to do, but it does take practice. It's not something you can do for 20 minutes and say it's not for me. It's something that could take up to weeks and weeks to practice to get it right. One thing you can do if you are having problems looking through your scope and focusing that reticle because you've been distracted, you can put a blinder over this eye. Now, the important thing about a blinder is you still need light to go through. So what I do is I usually make my blinders out of a bit of like slightly opaque plastic like this, so that nearly all of the natural light comes through, but I can't see anything through it. If you have a clear piece of plastic, you can give it a little rub with some sandpaper to, make it a little bit more opaque. And, you make a little bit, tuck it in your hat, and then you can set up your scope that way. And sometimes that can help for people who get distracted with the right eye. It is massively important that you set up your scope with both eyes open, because if you shoot like that, you're putting strain on this eye and you won't be getting a true relaxed focus. I cannot stress that point enough. So, we've hung bits of luminous tape all over our garden. We've been practicing both indoors and outdoors using this eye swapping technique to inbuild muscle memory into our shooting regime. The biggest key now is to make sure that when you go to a competition, that you just use the same practices that you've been doing at home or on the range. Don't adjust what you're doing or panic or change things up. You're already prepared. And you will find that when you're on an unfamiliar range and the wind is chopping and changing in directions that you would never understand if you weren't there, you'll have more time to analyze the data and react if you're not worrying about your eyes refocusing every time you swap from looking at your wind flags to through your scope. Now, I'm going to sign off and I'm going to say, you've got to remember, guys, this will take practice, but the rewards are massive if you can get it right. Saving half a second on swapping eyes and reading the wind flags and pulling the trigger can be the difference between an 8 and an X. Until next time, guys, remember, COVID or no COVID, you keep living the airgun dream and take care. Bye-bye.